Okay, welcome back to another video, and today I'm going to talk about how to fund your deals, how to fund your contracts. In this video, I'm going to share with you 5 ways of funding your deals and your contracts that you win with the government, and this is really important, especially if you're a new government contractor, because some of you will attest to probably finding yourself in this position, but what you don't want to happen is find yourself being awarded a contract and you don't have a way to fund and fulfill it, okay? It's reckless, it's getting a little bit too ahead of the curve here. So these are sorts of things that you need to be thinking through, funding especially, before you really even start bidding on contracts and trying to win them, because be careful what you wish for, right? You might just win one, and then what are you gonna do? And it feels really bad to have to give a contract back because you can't find a lender or anybody to financially back you, give you upfront money, whatever it is you're needing. Lots of contracts are different. They have different requirements in terms of funding to get them going. So there's 5 ways that you can fund contracts. And the first way is going to be with credit cards. Now, granted, this is going to be very limited to the credit line that you get on a credit card. And there can be lots of interest-free cards out there. It's got to certainly make sense. That'll let you know what your cost of money or cost of funds would be. But you can consider credit cards, maybe if you're going to use a couple, maybe you can get 10, 20, 30, 40, 50K between them. So you're only going to really be able to fund on those cards contracts that are not going to exceed that dollar value. So these are going to be very small contracts, maybe even several like micro purchases, right? That's quite that small, a couple $1,000s, 10,000, 12,000, like I said, maybe onwards and upwards if you win a couple of contracts, but it's unlikely to win them at exactly the same time. So you could very likely win one, pay off the card with the money from the contract, go on to the next one, right? But you're going to be making hundreds or maybe a few $1,000s in profitability on contracts that are that small, that are that dollar value. And I know small is relative, but it's only kind of alluding to the point that eventually you're going to want to go after larger opportunities than that. And yes, personally, I say those are quite small. And for those of you who think that you have to start with contracts that small, I would encourage you that you don't. They could be more trouble than they're worth. Like I said, the few hundreds or maybe even the few thousands of dollars to manage. If one thing goes wrong, it can immediately suck out that small, tiny little margin of profit that you have. And now all of a sudden, instead of being in the black, you're in the red. So just something to think about on contracts that small. But our first funding type, I would be remiss if I didn't make it part of this list of the 5, would be credit cards. Now, the number 2 source of funding is going to be lines of credit. So there's a number of types of contracts that will require you to spend money up front. So for example, supplies contracts. You will have to purchase the supplies, have them delivered, and then the government will reimburse you on a net 30, probably a net 30. So being able to move those supplies immediately becomes an immediate problem for you if you have pricing, if you have a vendor or a reseller or an OEM or a retailer or whoever you're going to enter into an agreement with to purchase whatever quantity of the supplies. Well, unless they have their own terms of like, okay, you can pay them within 30 days or something like that, where they'll do it on, they may even have their own type of financing, right? But then that cost of money will have to be built into your quote so it doesn't come out of your profit. So these are very appropriate needs for lines of credit. So a line of credit is, okay, hey, you can use X amount of money. You're going to have your own terms on paying that back, right? And you'll typically get a line of credit from a place like a bank. Line of credit is going to depend on your credit score for what you qualify for, as well as other information that the bank is going to want to research and have the statisticians go through to see what you qualify for. But lines of credits, they can go up closer to 30, 40, 50K, some of them. Maybe some are just going to be 15, 20K. So lines of credits typically can be larger than individual credit card limits. So it is a way to go up a little bit. And they can sometimes have more favorable terms in terms of repayment than credit cards, right? I think credit cards are usually the most aggressive when it comes to financing and repayment because they're higher risk, right? With a bank, you're still going to have some sort of cost of funds, of course, but it can be an opportunity for you to have money to dip into that if you need to pay for something immediately. Another option is, or another circumstance for contracts is even service contracts. With a service contract, it can be a monthly renewable type invoice, which we'll talk about in just a second too, with another financing option. But you're going to still have to kick that off. And so even with service contracts, in some instances, you can find yourself needing some upfront capital that a line of credit could get the ball rolling. But again, a lot of it is just going to come down to, is it enough? Is 30, 40, 50K enough? Well, if you're going after contracts that are even $100,000, it may or may not be enough. Depends if it's being divided out or if it's all at once. Okay, so something to think about. We have credit cards, we have lines of credits. Now, number 3, we're going to take a huge jump forward and go with our financing option number 3, which is invoice factoring. With invoice factoring, you have to work with a factoring company. So this is not typically going to be a bank. It's not going to be your bank. Factoring companies buy your invoice. So what would happen is the factoring company will put what's called a facility. They're going to put a facility in place. And in part of doing that, they're going to get set up to pay the government directly because they are in essence buying your invoice or partly buying your contract. It's still your contract. You still have to manage it. You're still the prime. They don't own the contract, but they're essentially buying your invoice and they're putting a facility in place where they're going to pay the government directly. And then the government's going to pay you on whatever government payment terms, net 30 to net 60. And then you're going to pay and reimburse the factoring company in turn with interest, with cost of money, and typically per invoice. Okay, so invoice factoring can typically only apply to larger service contracts. They're going to be wanting to see something like 20, 30, 50K invoice per month ongoing, maybe for a year or two. That's the type of deal that is attractive for an invoice factoring company to work with you. I know this because I've spent the last couple of years building relationships with a number of them, and I have those in place. But I've had to go through that learning experience with working with a lot of you who are bringing a $63,000 contract or $131,000 contract. An invoice factoring company has no interest. They're not going to make money on that. So it has to be large enough and it must be ongoing. Typically, must be ongoing, unless it's just a very large contract where they can make their money on one or a couple of revolutions of invoices. But other than that, you're probably looking at least an annual contract. That's probably going to be at least anywhere from $250,000 to $500,000. That's kind of really where, from what I've seen personally, and I've seen many deals fall apart just because the factoring company wasn't able to make things work for somebody who had a supply purchase. And another reason why I really push services over supplies, and increasingly encouraging you guys to not go after these tiny contracts, because it's just much harder to find funding and to back them, and you're not making that much money, so you're at a higher risk if something goes wrong. And then, I see a lot of you have to give the contract back because there's just not enough money to go around to make it worth a partner to work with you on. And that's unfortunately kind of the ugly truth. But as I said at the beginning of this video, it's important to start thinking of these things before you even start bidding on contracts. Have an idea. Develop a relationship with your bank. Look at credit cards if that's what is the route that you're going to pursue. Or, are you going to be looking at only focusing on larger service contracts? That way a factoring company is going to be willing to work with you, as I'm sharing with you today. It's kind of up to you, but it should definitely significantly shape your strategy, because winning the contract is really the start of the whole game. You have to get it funded, then you have to manage it and perform and do a good job. And if it's an annual or a couple-year contract, that can be a long time. There's going to be a lot of changes and ups and downs that go through that duration of the contract. So just getting the contract, you're just getting started in the game. It's not the end of the route. You're just getting started. So invoice factoring is something that's talked out a lot about. I get emails, hey Derek, or hey, I see comments, oh, I heard so had a $90,000 contract and had somebody factor it. Not going to happen. They probably had a misunderstanding, unless they've found the one lender that I haven't found, and by all means, get me in touch with them so that I can get them in touch with you all. But I've spoken with many of the established, so maybe they're like brand new and they're just kind of desperate. But I can just tell you over time, there's going to be less and less of that if that's something that you have found. And if you have found that's great. But just kind of giving you an inside look for those of you who are not into this, that you haven't had the conversations. I have, and I'm sharing that information with you right now so that you know what to expect and what to prepare for, because I want you to be successful when you win a contract. I don't want you scurrying last minute, and that's another thing that I hate, and I'm done doing it because I've gotten so many emails and I've truly tried to help you all. Hey, I got this contract. It's actually already expired, but they've given me a 1-week extension on it. Or, I've got 3 days left on this thing. So, if you have a person, tell them I need this by like tomorrow because I got to get this stuff ordered. Not going to work. It's not going to work. You're already behind the 8 ball. If you find yourself in that situation, best of luck to you. And I'm not being trite. I'm trying to help you to not get in that situation from the get-go. So keep that in mind, please. And if you do find yourself getting a contract award that's meeting some of these criteria, feel free to reach out to me and my team. Email us, support@govkidmethod.com. If you have a deal that you're needing funded, happy to make that introduction, get you plugged in. If it's a deal that is going to make sense, and I'm really kind of going over a lot of those criteria with you right now. So keep that in mind. Now, we do have one other funding, well, we actually have two, but one really important one to cover, which I will cover right now. And I'll call this GovCon Capital. So throughout like I said, especially the last couple of years, I've been really focused on trying to help put deals together for all of you guys behind the scenes here. And I have built a relationship with a unique company that focuses on government contracting capital, specifically lines of credit, not factoring, which is why it's so unique. And they will upfront money for you. And they will do typically up to 50 to 90% of the total value of the contract. So you have to have some skin in the game. You're not doing a 100% whatever, right? So 50 to 90% of the contract. And it's going to come in the form of a line of credit, which is great because It solves so many problems. Now, just like with factoring companies, there are some requirements. And the primary requirement with this is going to be, once again, the dollar value. So at a minimum, it has to be 100,000 K that's being financed. Okay, I'm just sharing with you the terms so you can get dollar values in your head. So if it's a minimum of 50%, and I said 50 to 90%, and 100K needs to be financed, that means the contract has to be at least 200K, because 50% of 200K is 100K, right? So it's similar space, as I said about the factoring company, 250 to 500, right? Again, for them to make money and to partner with you and back your deal, it's got to be a sufficient magnitude, a sufficient size to make sense. But with this being a line of credit, it's not buying the invoice. So it can be more of the upfront. It doesn't have to be a year long. It could be a larger supplies deal. That would be fine. That would be no problem for this particular funding source, GovCon Capital. And that's not the name of them. It's the label I'm giving it. So I'm not sharing the name. But like I said, if you find yourself with an award or pre-award, feel free to reach out to me and my team, support@govkidmethod.com. I'm going to ask to see it, to verify it. And if you have something, we can help back you. Okay, so I want to let you know that you do have a partner here in myself and my partnership, but you need to meet certain criteria. The other piece of criteria that should go without saying for all of these, and I might have mentioned it with the line of credit, but it is going to be your credit score. So credit score, favorable terms, you have to be 700 or more. If you're 600, 650, you're going to have a hard time. The cost of money is going to be too great. It's going to be like 20% plus because you're too much of a risk. So also keep that in mind. And best believe, banks and whoever, if they're giving you money, they're going to be seeing what you got going on under the hood. You know what I mean? So keep that in mind too. Whoever you have with your business, yourself, your partner, your colleague, for funding, you want to make sure somebody has a 700 plus credit score so that you can get the most favorable terms, which is going to give you lower interest rates, which means the additional charge going on to your contracts is going to be lower, which is going to make your contracts closer to that competitive range. Otherwise, it's just going to blow you out of the competitive range and you're never going to win anything. So there's a number of ducks here, as you can probably see, and you're mentally already putting in order, that would be good for you to do now, like now, so that you can put yourself in the best position to make these deals happen. If you're already bidding, take a quick pause, make sure you put things in place. If you haven't bid yet, if you haven't started bidding yet, put them in place now. Whatever you got to do with your business formation, like whatever, because you want to be approaching these companies with strong credit scores. Another thing is revenue they're going to look at. If the entity that you have registered in SAM has $0, it's riskier, less favorable terms. It's not even a business. If you've made no money, it's not even a business, it's a hobby. So is anything, what can you run through commercially, through that business, through that bank account, even if it's 20 grand, even if it's 50 grand, doing a job for your uncle, doing a job for somebody, get some sort of cash flow going through the business, okay, that you can show something. It's going to help you a lot to get funding. And then they're going to want you integrated with at least like QuickBooks Online. So like I said, even if you do 1 or 2 transactions, and you can do this closer to actually securing the funding, it's not the first duck to get in a row if you're someone who likes to put ducks in a row. I'm personally not, but for the sake of communication, it's not the first thing you have to do. It can be later on, because if you don't have anything, there's no point. But not the whole QuickBooks, but just QuickBooks Online, because, for example, with GovCon Capital, it's how they are going to provide you the line of credit and funds. So there has to be some sort of trail for that money coming into the business for their sake and for yours. So they're going to want to see something through QuickBooks Online. So again, giving you all the stuff up front here so that you can prepare, you can make notes, rewind, write this stuff down, because this is going to put you in the best position to get the best terms. And we're covering multiple different facets here for what's a good fit for what. So think of all of this when you're approaching contracts. And if you're going after service contracts that are 150, 200, 250 plus, you're going to be in a stronger position. Why I don't love small supplies contracts. So if you're independently wealthy, let's go ahead and move on to the next point now. Point number 5, you can finance your own deals. You can do private equity. You can have a rich uncle. But this is going to be basically funding these deals yourself. And I didn't want to lead with that. But yeah, for sure. Like, you can do that if you're sitting on that much capital, by all means, because there's not going to be cost of money, or if you are, you have a rich uncle or something like that, maybe they'll still do it for a tiny, small little margin that's going to be way better. And because they know you personally, they're not going to, have to check your credit score and run your background. They're not going to care if you have cash flow through the business. My guess is, though, a lot of you probably are not in that situation, so I won't talk too much about that. Credit cards, lines of credit, invoice factoring, GovCon Capital, and then personal financing or private equity. There's not really too many other ways to get around it. You're playing with something like this. At least one of these, maybe a couple of these. You can also try, and I mentioned it a little bit with services, you can try to negotiate payment terms, paid when paid, so that you can avoid having to upfront any money. And if you can, more power to you. If you can educate your vendor, your teaming partner, whoever, to say, hey, I will pay you within 2 weeks of getting paid by the government. The government's going to be paying net 30 to net 60. So then what that does is it makes them float. So if you can negotiate that and have them float for 30 to 60 days until you get paid by the government and then you pay them, if they're able to float, or like I said, if they have their own built-in financing, you can pursue that. Then you don't have to pursue any sort of like outside funding. If that's this case, none of these 5 are going to necessarily apply. But that's just for one deal. And if you're going to be in the space, you're going to be hopefully going after a lot of deals and larger deals. So inevitably, you're going to probably find yourself needing to get funding somehow. So hopefully, these 5 ways to fund your deal and government contracting is going to better prepare you. Now, if you haven't yet, I highly recommend that you do snag your spot, save your seat for my upcoming training, Win Contracts Faster Without Wasting Time and Money. Very much has to do with what we've covered in this video, because there's so many ways, so many like leaks in terms of your resources and your focus and your energy and your money, that the government contracting, especially the federal industry, it gobbles up, it eats it up, and it spits you out. And so many of you come out the other end and you have nothing to show for it, but your wallet is a lot lighter and you have less time and you have less patience for this GovCon stuff. So that training is going to help save you from that. And it's going to instead literally give you plots on a map of what you should start doing to win contracts faster again, without wasting time and money. So if you want a 12-month plus plan of what to focus on, and literally you want to save thousands of dollars immediately, tens of thousands of dollars immediately, by just sliding a bunch of stuff off the table saying, I don't have to do this. Derek is giving me permission. I don't have to worry about any of this. And then this is all that I have to do. Just tell me what I need to do. That's what the training is going to give you. The link for that is down below. It's totally free and it's only 30 to 35 minutes. So it's a high value use of your time. So like I said, if you have a pending award, if you have an award in your inbox, you're scrambling, maybe you didn't know this, shoot me an email, support@govkidmethod.com. Let's see if we can help you put a deal together. Like I said, we have the factoring and we have the GovCon Capital. I don't have credit cards for you. You're on your own for credit cards. And I'm not going to personally finance your deal either. So you'll have to go to your rich uncle or whatever for that. But for invoice factoring or GovCon Capital, we are able to make both of those available if you meet the right requirements, right? And if you have questions about it, if you're unsure, feel free to email us. We can help get you the necessary information for that as well. So like the video, subscribe to the channel, and until next time, guys, you got this.